Hey, 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 you know what time it is. Woo! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! We're back! Hi! We're back with Storytime with Chris. Hi, y'all. Welcome back. Welcome back. Boom, 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 boom. Welcome back. Welcome back. Boom, 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 boom. So, hi. Welcome to Storytime with Chris. Like I always say, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max relaxing, chillaxing time, in between time, mean time, scheme time, study time, break time, CP time, anytime that you want to hear a highly animated voice bring you wonderful stories of magic, science fiction, adventure, and many, many more in between. Alright, y'all, we're back with a series of unfortunate events. And the last time we were here, the falsely accused Jacques did not even get burned at the stake. Klaus and Sunny and Violet worked really hard to try to figure out how to save him, and found a rule in the rule book that any criminal that is made to be burned at the stake is allowed to have one final speech. And unfortunately, Jacques did not make it. He passed away in the jail. We don't know how. That's not important to the story, but it does give the idea of foul play, so to speak. But now, we're about to go into a new chapter and meet a new character. Or so we think. And I also was thinking of a couple of things. So, we're on book 7, so we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we got 6 books left in this series. And then we'll move on to something else. But one thing I was thinking about, so a while back we were doing the novel adaptations of some famous Studio Ghibli films. So we've read Kiki's Delivery Service, we've read My Neighbor Totoro, we've read Diane Wynne Jones's Howl's Moving Castle. And I was trying to look online, and a lot of the other Studio Ghibli films that are based off of novels or manga are unfortunately not available in English. I can read hiragana and katakana, however, it would be a bit harder to get that shipped over here, unfortunately, because some of these stories are either out of print or are so old that those who do have them are selling them at highly absorbent prices, and it's just too much. However, what I was thinking was there's technically a sequel to Howl's Moving Castle by the original author, and it's called The House of Many Ways. So it picks up where the original story ends and kind of goes into that, which Hayao Miyazaki, if you ever want to make a sequel to Howl's Moving Castle, which is a fantastic movie, that's the book you should pick on. Which also, another book in that series called The Castle in the Air, which is based off of Laputa, Castle in the Sky, which is another movie by Hayao Miyazaki, which is technically the first Studio Ghibli film. So we probably will include those in our next reading. Castle in the Air and The House of Many Ways. Yeah. The future is bright, y'all. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And no, I do not own the music in the background, which is brought to you yet again by Mr. Ambiance. Go check them out, Mr. Ambiance. They do amazing ambient covers of anime, TV shows, movies, specials, anything you could think, comic books, manga, anything, animation, anything you could think of. They have a ton of different ambient videos for music. So, and it's copyright free. So, go check them out. Show them some love. Chapter 9. There are not very many people in the world who enjoy delivering bad news. But I'm sorry to say that Mrs. Morrow was one of them. When she caught sight of the Baudelaire orphans gathered around Jacques, she rushed across the courtyard to tell them the details. "Wait until the Daily Punctilio hears about this!" she said enthusiastically, and pointed at Jacques with the sleeve of her pink robe. "Before he could be burned at the stake, Count Omar was murdered mysteriously in his jail cell." "Count Olaf," corrected Violet automatically. "So you're finally admitting that you know who he is," she cried triumphantly. "We don't know who he is," Klaus insisted, picking up his baby sister, who was quietly beginning to cry. "We only know that he is an innocent man." Officer Luciana clunked forward, and the crowd of townspeople and elders parted to let her walk right up to the children. I don't think this is a matter for children to discuss, she said, and raised her white-gloved hands in the air to get the crowd's attention. Citizens of VFD, she said grandly, I locked Count Olaf in the uptown jail last night, and when I arrived in the morning, he'd been killed. I have the only key to the jail, so his death is quite a mystery. A mystery, Mrs. Morrow said excitedly as the townspeople murmured behind her. What a thrill to be hearing about a mystery. Schwart, Sunny said tearfully. She meant something like, a dead man is not a thrill, but only her siblings were listening to her. You will all be happy to know that the famous Detective Dupin has agreed to investigate this murder. Officer Luciana continued. He is inside the uptown jail right now, examining the scene of the crime. The famous Detective Dupin, Mr. Lesko said. Just imagine. I've never heard of him, said a nearby elder. Me neither, Mr. Lesko admitted, but I'm sure he's very famous. What happened? Violet asked, trying not to look at the white sheet on the ground. How was Jacques killed? Why wasn't anybody guarding him? How could someone have gotten into his cell if you locked it? Luciana turned around and faced Violet, who could see her own astonished reflection in the policewoman's shiny helmet. As I said before, Luciana said again, I don't think this is a matter for children to discuss. Hi, Matt. Hi, Doreen. All right. Thank you for watching. Perhaps that man in overalls should take you children to a playground instead of a murder scene. Or downtown to do the morning chores, another elder said, his crow hat nodding. Hector, take the orphans away. Not so fast, called a voice from the doorway of the uptown jail. It was a voice, I'm sorry to say, that the Baudelaire orphans recognized in an instant. The voice was wheezing and scratching, and it had a sinister smile to it, as if the person talking were telling a joke. But it was not a voice that made the children want to laugh at a punchline. It was a voice that the children recognized from all the places they had traveled since their parents had died, and a voice the children knew from all their most displeasing nightmares. It was the voice of Count Olaf. The children's hearts sank, and they turned to see Olaf standing in the doorway of the jail wearing another one of his absurd disguises. He was wearing a turquoise blazer that was so brightly colored that it made Baudelaire's squint, and a pair of silver pads decorated with tiny mirrors that glinted in the morning sun. A pair of enormous sunglasses covered the entire upper half of his face, hiding his one eyebrow and his shiny, shiny eyes. On his feet were a pair of bright green plastic shoes with yellow plastic lightning bolts sticking out of them, covering his ankle and hiding his tattoo. But most unpleasant of all was the fact that Olaf was wearing no shirt, only a thick gold chain with the detective's badge in the center of it. The Baudelaires could see his pale and hairy chest peeking out at them, and it added an extra layer of unpleasantness to their fear. It's just not cool, Count Olaf said, snapping his fingers to emphasize the word cool, to dismiss subjects from the scene of the crime until Detective Dupin gives the okay. But surely the orphans aren't suspects, one of the elders says. They're only children, after all. It's just not cool, Count Olaf said, snapping his fingers again, to disagree with Detective Dupin. I agree, Officer Luciana said, and gave Olaf a big lipstick smile as she stepped through the doorway. Now let's get down to business, Dupin. Do you have any important information? We have some important information, Klaus said boldly. This man is not Detective Dupin. There are a few gasps from the crowd. He's Count Olaf. You mean Count Omar? Mrs. Morrow said. I can't stand people who revel in their own foolishness. Ma'am, just know that you're incorrect. His name is Count Olaf, not Omar. We mean Olaf, Violet said, and then turned so that she was looking Count Olaf right in the sunglasses. Those sunglasses may be hiding your eyebrow, and those shoes may be hiding your tattoo, but you can't hide your identity. You're Count Olaf if you kidnapped the Quagmire triplets and murdered Jacques. Who in the world is Jacques? Asked an elder. I'm confused. It's not cool, Olaf said with a snap, to be confused, so let me see if I can help you. He pointed at himself with a flourish. I am the famous Detective Dupin. I am wearing these plastic shoes and sunglasses because they're cool. Count Olaf is the name of the man who was murdered last night, and these 3 children, here, Olaf paused to make sure everyone was listening, are responsible for the crime. Don't be ridiculous, Olaf, Klaus said disgustedly. Olaf smiled nastily at all three Baudelaires. You are making a mistake when you call me Count Olaf, he said, and if you continue to call me that, you will see exactly how big a mistake you are making. Detective Dupin turned and looked up to address the crowd. Of course, the biggest mistake these children have made is thinking that they can get away with murder. There was a murmur of agreement from the crowd. I never trusted those kids, Mrs. Morrow said. They didn't do a very good job when they trimmed my hedges. Show them the evidence, Officer Luciano said, and Detective Dupin snapped his fingers. It's not cool, he said, to accuse people of murder without any evidence, but luckily I've found some. He reached into the pocket of his blazer and brought out a long pink ribbon decorated with plastic daisies. I found this outside Count Olaf's jail cell, he said. It is a ribbon, the exact kind of ribbon that Violet Baudelaire uses to tie up her hair. The townspeople gasped. Violet turned to see the citizens of VFD were looking at her with suspicion and fear, which are not pleasant ways to be looked at. Violet cried, That's not my ribbon! Violet cried, taking out her own hair ribbon out of her pocket. My hair ribbon is right here. How can we tell? An elder asked with a frown. All hair ribbons look alike. They don't look alike, Klaus said. The one found at the murder scene is fancy and pink. My sister prefers plain ribbons, and she hates the color pink. And inside the cell, Detective Dupin continued as if Klaus had not spoken, I have found this. He held up a small circle made of glass. This is one of the lenses in Klaus's glasses. But my glasses aren't missing any lenses, Klaus cried, as everyone turned to look at him in suspicion and fear. He took his glasses off and showed them to the crowd. You can see so for yourself. Just because you've replaced your ribbon in your lenses, Officer Luciano said, doesn't mean you're not murderers. Actually, they are not murderers, Detective Dupin said. They're accomplices. He leaned forward so he was right in the Baudelaire's faces, and the children could smell his sour breath as he continued talking. You orphans are not smart enough to know what the word accomplice means, but what it means? Helper of murderers. We know what the word accomplice means, Klaus said. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the 4 tooth marks on Count Olaf's body, Detective Dupin said with a snap of his fingers. There's only one person uncool enough to bite people to death, and that's Sonny Baudelaire. It's true that our teeth are sharp, another member of the council said. I noticed that when she served my hot fudge sundae. Our sister didn't bite anyone to death, Violet said indignantly, a word which here means in defense of an innocent baby. Detective Dupin is lying! It's not cool to accuse me of lying, Dupin replied. Instead of accusing other people of things, why don't you 3 children tell us where you were last night? We were at Hector's house, Klaus said. He'll tell you himself. The middle Baudelaire stood up on tiptoe and called out over the crowd. Hector! Tell everyone that we were with you! The citizens looked this way and that, the crow hats of the Hectors bobbing as they listened for a word from Hector. But no word came. The 3 children waited for a moment in the tense silence, thinking that surely Hector would overcome his skittishness in order to save them. But the handyman was silent. The only sounds the children could hear was the splashing of foul fountain and the muttering of the roosting crows. Hector sometimes gets skittish in front of crowds, Violet explained, but it's true. I spent the night working in his studio, and Klaus was reading in the secret library and— Enough nonsense! Officer Luciano said. Do you really expect us to believe that our fine handyman is building mechanical devices and has a secret library? Next, I suppose you'll say that he's building things out of feathers. It's bad enough that you killed Count Olaf, an elder said, but now you're trying to frame Hector for other crimes? I say that VFD no longer serve as guardian for such terrible orphans. Hear, hear, cried several voices scattered in the crowd, just as the children had planned to do themselves. I will send a message to Mr. Poe right away, the elder continued, and the banker will come and remove them in a few days. A few days is too long to wait, Mrs. Morrow said, and several citizens cheered in agreement. These children need to be taken care of as quickly as possible. I say that we burn them at the stake, cried Mr. Lesko, who stepped forward to wag his finger at the children. Rule number 201 clearly states, no murdering. But we didn't murder anyone, Violet cried. A ribbon, a lens, and some bite marks aren't enough evidence to accuse someone of murder.
It's enough evidence for me, an elder cried. We already have the torches. Let's burn them right now. Hold on a moment, another elder said. We can't simply burn people at the stake whenever we want.
The Baudelaires looked at one another, relieved that one citizen seemed immune to mob psychology.
I have a very important appointment in 10 minutes, the elder continued, so it's too late to do it now. How about tonight after dinner?
That's no good, said another member of the council. I'm having a dinner party then. How about tomorrow afternoon?
Yes, someone said from the crowd. Right after lunch. That's perfect time.
Hear, hear, Mr. Lesko cried. Hear, hear, Mrs. Morrow cried. Galashi, Sonny cried. Hector, help us! Violet cried. Please tell these people that we're not murderers.
I told you before, Detective Dupin said, smiling beneath his sunglasses. Only Sonny is the murderer. You two are accomplices, and I will put you all in jail where you belong.
Dupin grabbed Violet and Klaus's wrist with one scraggly hand and leaned down to scoop up Sonny with the other.
See you tomorrow afternoon for the burning at the stake.
He called out to the rest of the crowd and dragged the struggling Baudelaires through the door of the uptown jail. The children stumbled into a dim, grim hallway, listening to the faint sounds of the mob, cheering as the door slammed behind them.
I'm putting you in the deluxe cell, Dupin said. It's the dirtiest one.
He marched them down a dark hallway with many twists and turns, and the Baudelaires could see rows and rows of cells with their heavy doors hanging open. The only light in the jail came from tiny barred windows placed in each cell, but the children saw that every cell was empty, and each one looked dirtier than the rest.
You'll be in the one in jail before long.
Wow, excuse me. You'll be the one in jail before long, Olaf, Klaus said, hoping he sounded much more certain than he felt. You'll never get away with this.
My name is Detective Dupin, said Detective Dupin. My only concern is bringing you three criminals to justice.
But if you burn us at the stake, Violet said quickly, you'll never get your hands on the Baudelaire fortune. Dupin rounded the last corner of the hallway and pushed the Baudelaires into a small, damp cell with only a small window bench as furniture. By the light of the barred window, the siblings could see that the cell was quite filthy, as Dupin had promised. The detective reached out to pull the door closed, but with his sunglasses on, it was too dark to see the door handle, so he had to throw off all pretense, a phrase which here means take off part of his disguise for a moment, and remove his sunglasses. As much as the Baudelaires hated Dupin's ridiculous disguise, it was worse to see their enemy's one eyebrow and the shiny, shiny eyes that had been haunting them for so long.
Don't worry, he said in a wheezy voice. You won't be burned at the stake. Not all of you, at least. Tomorrow afternoon, one of you will make a miraculous escape if you consider being smuggled out of VFD by one of my associates to be an escape. The other two will be burned at the stake as planned. You bratty orphans are too stupid to realize it, but a genius like me knows that it may take a village to raise a child, but it only takes one child to inherit a fortune.
The villain laughed a loud and rude laugh and began to shut the door of the cell.
But I don't want to be cruel, he said, smiling to indicate that he really wanted to be as cruel as possible. I'll let you three decide who gets the honor of spending the rest of their puny life with me, and who gets to burn at the stake. I'll be back at lunchtime for your decision.
The Baudelaire orphans listened to the wheezing giggle of their enemy as he slammed the cell door and walked back down the hallway in his plastic shoes, and felt a sinking feeling in their stomachs, where the huevos rancheros Hector had made for them last night were still being digested. When something is being digested, of course, it gets smaller and smaller as the body uses up all of the nutrients inside the food. But it didn't feel that way to the three children. The youngsters did feel as if the small potatoes they had eaten for dinner were getting smaller. The Baudelaire's orphans huddled together in the dim light and listened to the laughter echo against the walls of the uptown jail, and wondered just how large the potatoes of their lives would grow. And that is where we will end for today. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a fabulous, fabulous day. I'll see you later. Enjoy your day, y'all. Bye-bye now.